I'm Emily Carter, a 40-year-old bank employee from Portland, Oregon, who never believed in God, the afterlife, or anything beyond the cold numbers on my spreadsheets. But on a fateful, rainy night on I-5, I died. My heart stopped beating for a full 4 minutes amid the wail of sirens and flashing headlights. I didn't just come back. I returned with a chilling truth. Death isn't the darkness or heaven preached by churches, nor the void I once assumed. In those 4 minutes, God appeared, showing me a 1,400-year-old book, Liber Mortis, the Book of the Dead, hidden by the church because it reveals what really happens in the 49 days after your soul leaves your body. It's a test most of us fail, not because we're weak, but because no one prepares us. When I awoke, I started searching and found science. From neuroscience to quantum physics, proving every word he said. This isn't just my story, it's a warning for you. Death isn't a mystery, but if you're not ready, those 49 days will be a nightmare you can't escape. Listen to me, because this truth will change how you live forever. Rain pounded the windshield, each drop hitting like a drumbeat in my head as I drove my beat-up Honda Civic down I-5. It was Friday night, January 7th, 2025. Nothing special. Just another day I'd left the bank after 12 hours hunched over spreadsheets. The streetlights blurred through the water, casting smeared yellow streaks across the slick road. I'm Emily Carter, 40, brown hair tied back in a messy bun, eyes weary behind my glasses, and I couldn't even remember the last time I'd slept through the night. My phone buzzed on the passenger seat, a text from my boss, Greg. "Where's the Q1 report, Carter?" "Due Monday," I muttered a curse, my right hand slipping off the wheel to type back. "I'll send it tomorrow morning, driving now." My eyes stayed glued to the screen, fingers tapping fast, oblivious to the speed creeping up. 60, then 65 miles an hour on the wet road. I-5, stretching from Portland down through southern Oregon, was packed even in the rain, a distant truck horn blaring somewhere ahead. I hit send, and the phone buzzed again. "Greg." "No good. I need it tonight." "Damn it," I yelled, slamming my hand on the wheel. That's my life, an endless loop of deadlines, pressure, and loneliness. Divorced from Tom 5 years ago. No kids, no close friends, just work and a cold little apartment in downtown Portland. I didn't believe in God, the afterlife, or anything beyond the numbers on my Excel sheets. If death's the end, so be it, I'd thought, but I never imagined it'd come this soon. A blinding flash of headlights snapped me out of it, a truck barreling toward me, its massive tires skidding on the pavement. Panic hit. I yanked the wheel right, but it was too late. The crash roared like thunder, metal crunching, glass shattering everywhere, and my head slammed into the driver's side window. Pain. A sharp jolt stabbed through my temple, then everything went black. My heart stopped at 9:47 p.m., the paramedics' log would later say. 4 minutes, 240 seconds. I was dead, but I didn't vanish. I felt weightless, like my body had no mass. And when I opened my eyes, or rather, when awareness kicked back in, I saw myself. Not in the car, but floating above it, a few yards from my own wreckage. The Honda Civic was a mangled heap. Front wheel snapped off. Windshield smashed under the rain. I saw my body slumped over the steering wheel, blood trickling from my forehead down my neck, eyes wide open but lifeless. Paramedics were cutting the door open, ambulance lights flashing red and white in the dark. One shouted, "No pulse! Get the defibrillator ready." What's happening? I thought, my voice silent, echoing only in my mind. I tried screaming, "I'm here! I'm not dead!" But no one heard. I raised my hand, or what I thought was my hand, but saw nothing, just this weird floating sensation. My heart, or what used to be my heart, wasn't beating, yet I was still aware, still thinking, still terrified. I turned back to the highway. Cars slowed, people gathered in the rain. A middle-aged man with an umbrella stood nearby, muttering, "Poor thing, probably won't make it." Panic surged. "I'm not dead! I can't be dead!" I lunged toward my body, desperate to climb back in, but an invisible force shoved me away. I watched the paramedic press paddles to my chest, yelling, "Shock 1!" My body jerked, but I felt nothing. "I'm dreaming," I told myself. "It's just a dream." But dreams aren't this cold, this real. The sound of rain, the smell of gasoline, the wail of sirens pierced my head like knives. Then it happened. A light appeared. Not headlights, not the ambulance, but something else entirely. It came from above, brilliant, pure white, warm like summer sun but not blinding. I looked up, and it pulled me, not with force, but with a call, like it knew me, understood me. I fought it, thinking of the report I hadn't sent, my empty apartment, the life I hadn't finished. "No, I'm not ready," I screamed in my head, but the light didn't stop. It engulfed me, erasing the highway, the wreckage, everything, just me and the light. In that light, I felt peace, the first time in decades. No more work stress, no more loneliness, no more vague fear haunting my nights. But I was still me, still stubborn, still skeptical. What is this? I wondered. Heaven? No, I don't believe in heaven. I scrambled for logic. Maybe my brain's out of oxygen, hallucinating before it shuts down. But the light wasn't a hallucination. It was alive, aware, like it was watching me, waiting for me. Then a voice spoke, not from one spot, but from everywhere, deep and gentle. "Emily Carter, don't be afraid. I am God, and I will show you the truth about death." It wasn't like anything I'd heard before, not the preacher I'd mocked at church as a kid, not my father who'd left when I was 10. It was powerful, but not frightening, like it knew everything about me, even the things I'd buried deep. God? I thought, almost laughing. I don't believe in God. I must be losing it. But the voice went on. "You don't need to believe right now, just look." Before me, the light gathered, and a book appeared. Ancient, its brown leather, cover worn, handwritten Latin faint on yellowed pages. Liber Mortis. The title etched on the front glowed faintly, like it was alive. "This is the Book of the Dead," the voice said, "written 1400 years ago by those I chose, but hidden by men out of fear. It holds the truth of the 49 days after death, the trial of the soul you've just entered." I went quiet, unsure what to think. I'd never read the Bible beyond a few verses my mom forced on me as a kid, and now God, if that's who he was talking about a book I'd never heard of. Why me? I asked in my mind. Because you will bring this truth back, the voice answered, and because you've been chosen to see. The light dimmed, and the book opened before me. I didn't read it. It was like the pages spoke straight into my mind. Images flashed, a soul leaving its body, a clear light beckoning, then a strange realm, Bardo, God called it, where souls face illusions, relive their lives, and choose between heaven or reincarnation. This isn't the heaven or hell the church teaches, God said, but my plan, a test for mankind to find me or lose themselves in their own minds. I felt dizzy, not from fear, but because everything I'd believed was crumbling. I wanted to ask more, but the light trembled, and I felt myself being pulled back. It's not over, Emily. God's voice rang out one last time. You will live again, and you will find Liber Mortis. Show them. Then I heard, Shock 3. My body jolted under the paramedic's hands, and darkness swallowed me again. The light engulfed me, and I felt myself dissolving, not in pain, but as if everything heavy inside me, from work stress to lingering loneliness, was being washed away. I no longer heard the rain, the ambulance sirens, or the shouts of the rescue team on I-5. It all vanished, leaving just me in this radiant white light, so warm I almost wanted to cry. But I was still Emily Carter, still stubborn, still refusing to believe in anything I couldn't explain. What is this? I asked myself. Am I dead? Or is this just my brain's final hallucination before it shuts down? I tried to find a logical answer, the way I always did with problems at the bank. Maybe it was a chemical reaction in my head, lack of oxygen, or some substance released as my body gave out. I'd read something about that once, how near-death people see lights and think it's heaven. But I didn't believe in heaven, didn't believe in God, didn't believe in anything beyond what I could calculate and control. So why was I still here, still thinking, still feeling? Then that voice spoke again, deep and gentle, as if it came from the light itself. Emily Carter, don't be afraid. I am God, and I will show you the truth about death. I froze, almost laughing in my head. God? Really? I don't believe in God. I must be insane. I thought back to when Mom dragged me to church as a kid in Portland. Those long sermons about heaven and hell I'd always mocked. To me, they were just fairy tales for the weak. But this voice was different. Not like the old preachers, drone or my father's voice when he walked out. It was powerful, clear, and oddly, I felt it knew me, truly knew me. God? I asked in my mind, my tone dripping with doubt. If you're God, why am I here? I don't believe in you. I don't pray. I haven't done anything to be chosen. The voice answered, calm as if it expected my reaction. You don't need to believe right now, just look. The truth doesn't depend on your faith, but on what I set in motion from the beginning. I wanted to argue, but before I could think further, the light in front of me gathered, and a book appeared. It was ancient, its brown leather cover worn and frayed, like it had survived centuries. Handwritten Latin faded on yellowed pages, and the title etched on the front glowed faintly, Liber Mortis. I didn't know much Latin beyond a few words from college, but somehow I understood it instantly. Book of the Dead. "What is this?" I asked, my voice echoing in the space, though I had no mouth to speak. God replied, "This is the Book of the Dead, written 1400 years ago by those I chose to record the truth about death. But it was hidden by mankind, for they feared what it revealed." I stared at the book, feeling both curious and uneasy. "Why? Haven't I heard of it? The Bible doesn't say anything like this." God answered, "The Bible you know is only a part, what men chose to keep. Liber Mortis is the full plan of mine, buried in darkness by the church, because it was too powerful, too different. But now you will see, for you've entered the trial it describes." The light trembled, and the book opened before me. I didn't turn the pages. It was like it told its story straight into my mind. I saw images, a soul leaving its body, hovering over its own corpse, just like I'd done on I-5. Then a clear light appeared, the very light I stood in, and God said, "This is my light. When people die, I give them their first chance to recognize me and return to me. If they surrender, they're freed, released from the world's cycle. But most don't recognize it. They fear, cling to their old lives, and the light fades." I remembered the moment the light pulled me, how I'd resisted, thinking of my unsent report, my empty apartment. "You mean I almost made it?" I asked. "Yes," God replied, "but you weren't ready. So you entered the next stage, Bardo, where the soul faces itself for 49 days. The images in the book shifted. I saw a strange realm, timeless, formless, just awareness. A soul floated, and then visions appeared. First gentle faces, like lost loved ones, smiling and beckoning. "This is the first illusion," God explained. "Reflections of the soul's memories and desires. If they chase them, the visions turn to fear, twisted faces, accusing shouts, forcing the soul to face what it's buried." I shivered, imagining my mom, gone from cancer 10 years ago, appearing, then turning into something horrific. "Why do you do that?" I asked. "I don't," God replied. "Their minds create them. I only give them the chance to see themselves clearly. In those 49 days, they'll see angels and demons, but all are the darkness and light within them." The book went on. I saw the soul enter the next phase. A great mirror appeared, and they relived their entire life, not just remembering, but feeling every action, from their own view and those they'd touched. "This is the truth," God said. "No judge but me, yet the soul judges itself. They feel the joy they brought, the pain they caused. No one escapes." I thought of my own life. Arguments with Tom before the divorce. Days I ignored Mom when she was sick. Times I brushed off coworkers. "I'll have to see it all?" I asked, my voice trembling. "Yes," God replied. "And you'll learn to let go or be pulled back into the cycle." The final images emerged. After 49 days, the soul faced a choice. Some saw loved ones calling them back, familiar scenes full of temptation, but it was a trap, leading to a new life of suffering. "This is the final test," God said. "If they recognize the illusion and let go, they return to me. But most don't. They cling, and the cycle continues. I fell silent, my mind reeling. Everything I'd known about death, that it was nothing, shattered. "Why me?" I asked again. "Because you're stronger than you know," God replied. "And the world needs this truth. You'll live again, Emily, but your mission is to find Liber Mortis in life and show them." I wanted to ask more about the book, the 49 days myself, but the light shook, and I felt my body pulling me back. "Don't fear," God's voice rang out one last time. "I'm always here. Now go." Then I heard a distant "Shock 3," and darkness swallowed me again. The light faded, and I felt myself falling, not to the ground, but into an endless void. No more I-5, no more wrecked Honda Civic, no more God's voice in my head. I opened my eyes, or rather I realized I could still see, and around me was a strange space. No walls, no floor, no sky, just a misty gray expanse, like I was floating in a formless dream. I had no body, couldn't touch my hands or face, but I still felt myself, still thought, still feared. Where am I? I wondered. Then I remembered God's words. Bardo, where the soul faces itself for 49 days. So I'm really dead? I tried to recall the highway, but the memory felt distant, like it belonged to someone else. I wanted to run, to escape, but there was no direction. Everything was the same, endless and empty. The first day, I don't know how I counted, with no day or night here. I just floated, trying to understand. I thought of work, Greg's Q1 report, my cold Portland. Apartment. I have to get back, I told myself. I'm not done. But then I heard a whisper. Soft, distant, like wind rustling. Emily, where are you? I startled. That voice was familiar. It was Mom. I turned, though I had no body to turn with, and saw her standing a few steps away. She wore the blue blouse she loved, silver hair tied back, her face gentle like when I was a kid. "Mom?" I whispered, my voice echoing for the first time in this space. She smiled, arms open. "Emily, come to me. I miss you." My heart, or what used to be my heart, tightened. Mom died of cancer 10 years ago, and I wasn't there much in her final days. I stepped forward, wanting to hug her, to say the apology I'd never voiced. But as I nearly touched her, her face changed. The smile vanished, her eyes turned white, and her voice twisted into something demonic. "You left me to die alone. You're selfish." I stumbled back, panicked. She wasn't Mom anymore. She grew taller, claws sprouting from her hands, hair swirling like darkness. "No, that's not you," I screamed. But she advanced, growling. "You don't deserve to be my daughter." I ran, or rather drifted fast. But she chased me, her shouts echoing through the void, stabbing my mind like knives. I don't know how long I fled, but I finally collapsed, exhausted. Though there was no ground to fall on, her image dissolved, and I lay there, gasping in my mind. Illusions, I muttered, recalling God's words. This is the first illusion. But it felt too real. The pain in Mom's eyes, the fury in her voice, all the guilt I'd carried for a decade. The next days, the illusions continued. I saw Tom, my ex-husband, in our old Portland apartment, holding a beer, looking at me with cold eyes. "You never loved me," he said, voice tinged with sadness. I wanted to explain, to say I'd tried, but he morphed into a shadow, face distorted, yelling, "You ruined my life." I saw Greg, my boss, smirking, "You're useless, Carter." Then coworkers, old friends, all appeared, gentle at first, then turning into snarling demons, accusing me of every mistake I'd made. By day 8, I couldn't take it. I screamed, "Stop! I don't want to see this!" But no one heard, because no one was really here but me. I curled up, trying to hide, but the illusions grew stronger. They weren't just images, they carried feelings. Tom's loneliness when I left, Mom's disappointment when I skipped hospital visits, Greg's frustration at my delays. I felt it all, like I was them. Then around day 22, everything shifted. The gray haze vanished, and a great mirror appeared. Not physical, but a shimmering screen of light. I heard God's voice faintly. "Look, Emily, this is the truth." I didn't want to, but I couldn't resist. The mirror pulled me in, and I relived my life. Not just remembering, but living it again. I saw myself at 10, arguing with Mom about church. I felt her sadness as I turned away, and my own pain when Dad left. I saw myself at 25, marrying Tom. Then the years when love crumbled. My coldness, his desperation, and I felt both. I saw myself at 30 by Mom's hospital bed, then leaving for work. I felt her loneliness, like a knife in my chest. I saw myself at 40, snapping at coworkers, ignoring friends, and I felt their hidden hurt. I cried, no tears, without a body, but I cried in my soul. "I'm sorry," I whispered. But no one heard. The mirror didn't forgive or comfort, it just showed the truth, nothing more. I relived every moment, every mistake, every small joy I'd overlooked, like helping a new coworker or laughing with Tom before it all fell apart. But the pain outweighed the joy, and I couldn't escape. By day 35, I started to understand. This isn't punishment, I thought. It's a lesson. I stopped running, stopped justifying. When Mom appeared in the mirror again, I didn't turn away. I looked at her and said, "Mom, I'm sorry." Her image didn't turn demonic. She just smiled sadly, then faded. I felt lighter, like a burden had lifted. But the trial wasn't over. On day 36, the space changed again. I saw my Portland apartment, the smell of coffee, rain tapping the window, a familiar warmth. Tom stepped out, not a demon, but the old Tom, smiling gently, saying, "Come back to me, Emily. We can start over." I heard Mom's laughter from the kitchen, like she'd never died. I wanted to step in, to live those days again. But then God's voice broke through, soft but clear. "That's temptation, Emily. Your next life, if you choose it. Look closer." I did, and the scene twisted. Tom aged, face wrinkled, eyes empty. Mom vanished, and the apartment turned cold, full of arguments and pain. "What's this?" I asked. "The life you'd return to if you cling," God replied. "Another cycle. Choose." I stood there, staring at the apartment, at Tom, thinking of Mom. I wanted to go back, to fix everything, but I remembered God's words. Recognize the illusion and let go. I took a deep breath, though I had no lungs, and said, "No, I don't choose that life." The apartment dissolved, Tom vanished, and the clear light returned, enveloping me again. By day 49, I felt different. No more fear, no more regret. I stood in the light, and God's voice spoke. "You've seen Emily. Now choose, stay with me, or go back." I looked at the light, feeling endless peace, but then I recalled his words. "You will bring this truth back." I said, "I choose to go back, so they know." The light shook, and I felt myself pulled back again, faster than ever. Not floating like in Bardo, but as if someone grabbed me, dragging me through a dark tunnel. God's voice still echoed in my head. "You will live again, and you will find Liber Mortis. Show them." I wanted to scream, to ask more. Find it where? How do I know it's real? But there was no time. A sharp pain stabbed my chest, and I heard a shout. "Shock 3! 1, 2, 3, shock!" I opened my eyes. For real this time, not in my mind. The blinding white of ER lights made me squint, and I felt my body again, heavy, aching, alive. I was on a hospital bed, my chest burning like it had been scorched, arms tangled with IV lines. A doctor stood beside me, voice urgent. "She's got a pulse. Stabilize her now." I heard machines beeping, people rushing around, and the sharp smell of antiseptic hit my nose. I was back, after 4 minutes dead on I-5. I tried to sit up, but my body was so weak my hands trembled. "Stay down!" a nurse yelled, pushing me back. I gasped, my mind spinning. Where was I just now? I wondered. Bardo flashed back vividly. Mom's twisted face, Tom in that hazy apartment, the great mirror making me relive 40 years of my life. And God's voice, powerful, gentle, unforgettable. You will bring this truth back. She's awake, another doctor said, shining a flashlight in my eyes. What's your name? Do you remember anything? I whispered, Emily. Emily Carter, I crashed. He nodded, but his eyes were skeptical. You were dead 4 minutes, heart completely stopped. No one knows how you came back. Your brain shouldn't even be functioning. I stayed, silent, unsure how to respond. I wanted to say, I met God. He showed me the 49 days after death. But I knew they'd think I was crazy. I lay there, listening to the doctors and nurses talk. They mentioned the accident. A truck lost control. My car smashed. The rescue team cutting me out. You're lucky, a nurse said, or more like a miracle. I didn't reply, just stared at the stark white ceiling, thinking of Liber Mortis. Was that book real? God told me to find it, but how? It had been hidden for 1400 years, he said. So where was it now? After a few hours, they moved me to recovery. I lay alone, watching rain tap the window. Portland rain, just like the night I died. I wasn't scared anymore, but my mind buzzed with questions. If it was all real, I thought, then I have to do something. I can't go back to my old life, banking, deadlines, living like a machine. God's words weren't a hallucination. I felt their truth, deep and undeniable. I closed my eyes, recalling every detail he said. The clear light, illusions, the great mirror, the lure of rebirth. I'd survived Bardo, chosen to return, not to live aimlessly, but to change something. I have to find Liber Mortis, I muttered to the empty room. If it's real, I'll prove it to the world. The door opened, and a nurse came in, checking machines. You okay? She asked. I nodded, but my mind was fixed. I'm okay, and I've got work to do. When she left, I looked at the rain again, feeling like it was telling me, start, Emily. I wasn't the Emily Carter of yesterday. I was the one who'd died and come back. The one with a mission from God. I decided. When I got out, I'd quit the bank. I'd find Liber Mortis, even if it meant digging through libraries, talking to scholars, or flying to the Vatican. I'd show them death wasn't nothing, wasn't the heaven or hell of catechisms. It was a 49-day trial everyone faced. And I'd do it not for me, but for people like the old me, the ones who didn't believe, didn't prepare, didn't know. I smiled faintly, the first time in years. Thank you, I whispered, unsure if God heard. But I believed he did, because I'd heard him, and I'd returned. I left the hospital after a week, my body still aching, but my mind utterly changed. The doctors told me to rest, avoid stress, but I couldn't sit still. I'd been dead for 4 minutes, seen Bardo, heard God speak. There was no going back to my old life, like nothing happened. The day I got out, I stood under Portland rain, watching cars stream by, and told myself, I have to find Liber Mortis. That's why I came back. I returned to my small downtown apartment, dusty, cold, with bank papers piled on the table. I looked at them, recalling days chasing deadlines for Greg, and it felt like someone else's life. I opened my laptop, typed Liber Mortis into Google. Unsurprisingly, nothing but vague posts about ancient Latin texts came up. 1400 years ago, I muttered. If the church hid it, it won't be this easy. I needed a plan, but I had no idea where to start. I quit my bank job the next day. I called Greg, kept it short. I'm done. Give the Q1 report to someone else. He yelled through the phone, You're crazy, Carter. Who's gonna do your work? I hung up, not bothering to reply. I wasn't Emily of numbers anymore. I was Emily of Bardo, of the mission God gave me. I pulled out my savings, about $20,000, enough for a few months, and decided to pour everything into finding the book. I started at the Portland Public Library. I spent hours flipping through books on Christian history, ancient manuscripts, but nothing mentioned Liber Mortis. I asked an elderly librarian, Helen, if she'd heard of such a book. She chuckled. Looking for buried treasure? The church hid a lot, but no one knows exactly what. She suggested I find a history professor at the University of Portland. They'd know more about old stuff than me. I emailed Professor David Miller, fibbing that I was an independent researcher studying lost manuscripts. He agreed to meet me at his campus office that weekend. When I walked in, he, a man about 60, salt and pepper hair, thick glasses, eyed me skeptically. "You say you're looking for Liber Mortis?" he asked, voice low. I nodded, giving a trimmed version. I read it's a Latin text from the 7th century, hidden by the church for unusual content. Ever heard of it? David frowned, tapping his desk. I know of banned books from the Middle Ages, like Codex, Gigas, or heretical texts. But Liber Mortis? Never. If it's real, it might be locked in the Vatican archives, or destroyed long ago. I felt a pang of disappointment, but then he added, "Still, there are handwritten copies from English, monasteries back then. I've seen records of a strange manuscript at Glastonbury Abbey, sealed for dangerous content. Could be related." I seized it. "How do I get it?" I asked. David smirked. "You think it's that simple? It's not in public libraries. But I have a friend in England, an archaeologist, Margaret Evans. I'll ask if she can track down a copy." I thanked him, heart racing. It was my first lead, however slim. For the next 2 weeks, I taught myself about Christian history and ancient texts. I read about the era when the Catholic Church controlled knowledge, burning heretical books, hiding what didn't fit Orthodox doctrine. I learned about the Vatican. Their secret archives hold millions of unpublished documents. If Liber Mortis is hidden, I thought, it could be there. But I had no money or connections to reach the Vatican, so I pinned my hopes on David and Margaret. Finally, David called. "Margaret found something," he said over the phone. "A handwritten copy from Glastonbury Abbey, buried in the British Museum's archives since the 19th century. It's unnamed, but the content matches your description. A Latin book on the soul's journey after death." She sent me a scan. I nearly shouted, "Send it to me now!" The next day, I got an email from David with a PDF attached. I opened it on my laptop, hands trembling. The first page appeared, handwritten Latin, scrawled ink, the cover reading Liber Mortis. I wasn't fluent in Latin, but with Google Translate and an online dictionary, I deciphered the opening. "To those who read this book, here is the truth of the 49 days after the soul leaves the body, revealed by God to the chosen." I read on, and every line matched what I'd seen in Bardo. The clear light, gentle then wrathful illusions, the great mirror, the final temptation. I sat there, staring at the screen, tears rolling down my face. "It's real," I whispered. God was telling the truth. The book described my 49 days exactly. Not a dream, not a hallucination, but a truth the church had buried. I read more. "Those unprepared will wander lost in Bardo, falling into the cycle forever." I remembered God's words, "You will show them." And I knew I couldn't stop. I called David, voice shaky. "Can you help me translate it all? I need to understand everything." He agreed, though skeptical. "You're obsessed with this," he said, "but I'll help. It could be a big find, if you can prove it. I smiled. I will. Not just for you, but for the world. I started taking notes, comparing Liber Mortis to my experience. I realized this wasn't just personal, it was a warning. If the book was right, billions were living oblivious to what death really is. I wondered, how do I bring it to light? But first I needed proof. Not just my word, but something science could back. I messaged David. I need a scientist. Know anyone? My journey was just beginning. I sat in my apartment, staring at the Liber Mortis scan on my laptop, scribbling notes frantically. The book was real. I knew it, because I'd lived its 49 days. But I also knew my word wasn't enough. Who'd believe an atheist ex-banker, dead for 4 minutes, claiming she met God and got a mission? I needed proof. Not faith, but something measurable, testable, something science couldn't dismiss. David Miller agreed to translate all of Liber Mortis. He worked slowly but thoroughly, emailing me sections with detailed notes. It's written in ancient Latin, he said in a call, and the content is odd, not like Orthodox Christian doctrine. If it's real, the church had reason to hide it. I nodded over the phone. I know it's real. I just need to prove it. I asked David about a scientist. He thought for a moment, then said, Sarah Tran, a neuroscientist at the University of Oregon. She studies near-death experiences, NDEs, and how the brain reacts at death. I'll introduce you. I thanked him, feeling a door crack open. If science could explain what I saw in Bardo, I'd have something to stand on. I met Sarah a week later at her office in Eugene, a 2-hour drive from Portland. She was about 50, short black hair, sharp eyes behind small glasses. I told her my story, the I-5 crash, 4 minutes without a heartbeat, the light, Bardo, and Liber Mortis. I handed her David's partial translation. She listened without interrupting, but I saw her frown. You know I'm a scientist, right? She said when I finished. I don't believe in God or souls. I study brains, but NDEs are real, and I'll look if you've got data. I nodded. I don't need you to believe me. Just check if what I saw matches science. Sarah agreed, though she clearly thought I was half crazy. She kept the translation and said, I'll read it. If there's anything worth noting, I'll call. I left her office, hopeful yet nervous. This was the first step to turning my personal truth into public fact. 2 weeks later, Sarah called. You should come here, she said, voice serious. I read Liber Mortis, and some things strangely align with my research. I drove to Eugene immediately, heart pounding. When I walked in, Sarah had the translation and a stack of scientific papers spread across her desk. Sit, she said, pointing to a chair. I don't know where you got this book, but it describes NDE phenomena we've documented with eerie accuracy. I sat, eyes lighting up. Sarah began. First, the clear light you mentioned, and Liber Mortis, calls God's light. Over 70% of NDE survivors report a warm, non-blinding white light. Science says it's the brain lacking oxygen, releasing DMT, a natural hallucinogen. But what's odd is, Liber Mortis claims if you recognize the light, you're free. If not, you move to the next phase. Many of my patients say the light called to them, but they resisted out of fear or attachment. I nodded, recalling how I'd rejected the light over my unsent report. That's exactly what I felt, I said. Sarah went on. The illusion phase, gentle then wrathful, matches too. Psychology calls it emotional flashbacks. When the brain nears death, it triggers memories, often of loved ones. But if there's guilt or fear, they turn negative, just like your mom and ex turning demonic. I shivered, but excitement grew. What about the Great Mirror? I asked. Sarah picked up a paper. This is the wildest part. In NDEs, 90% of patients report a life review. They relive their lives, not just recalling, but feeling others' perspectives. Brain scans show theta waves, a deep meditative state, spiking then. Liber Mortis says you judge yourself through the mirror. Science says it's the prefrontal cortex activating self-assessing morality. Perfect match. I nearly jumped from my chair. So it's real. Science can prove it. Sarah raised a hand. Slow down. These are correlations, not absolute proof. But I'll admit, this book knows things no one back then should have understood about the brain. She pointed to the end of Liber Mortis. The rebirth temptation. It says if you cling to illusions, you return to the cycle. I don't buy reincarnation, but quantum physics has theories about consciousness, that it doesn't vanish, might transfer. Crazy idea, but not impossible. I stared at her, mind reeling. You mean death isn't the end? Sarah shrugged. I don't know. But if Liber Mortis is right, it describes a process. Light, illusions, self-reflection, choice, that science is starting to grasp. You might be onto something. I worked with Sarah and David for the next 2 months. David finished translating Liber Mortis, sending me the full 60-page handwritten text, packed with details on the 49 days. Sarah took it to her lab, comparing it to NDE data from hundreds of patients. We dug into more research. Light. Neuroscientists confirm DMT and abnormal brain activity at death produce white light, matching the book's description. Illusions. PTSD psychology showed memories resurface as positive or negative images, like Bardo's illusions. Mirror. Life review was documented via EEG, with theta and delta waves surging, just as I'd felt. Rebirth. Physicists like Roger Penrose suggested consciousness ties to quantum effects, possibly persisting beyond the body, unproven, but plausible. By month's end, I sat with Sarah and David at a Portland cafe, rain falling outside. What do we have? I asked. Sarah said, You've got an ancient book describing NDEs with uncanny accuracy, and modern science is starting to explain it. But to convince the world, you need to publish. David nodded. If you want, I'll help write a scientific paper. But you have to tell your story. No one will buy it without that. I went quiet, thinking of Bardo. God, my mission. I'll do it, I said. Not just for me. They need to know what death is. Sarah smiled faintly. You're unusual, Emily. I don't believe in God, but I believe you do. David added, and I believe this is the biggest find of my career. I went home, opened Liber Mortis again, and wrote the first line of the paper. I died for 4 minutes, and this is the science that proves it. I knew the road ahead was long, but I wasn't afraid. I had science, liber mortis, and God's words in my heart. But as I set the pen down, watching rain fall outside my Portland window, a question crept in. I'd found the truth, was ready to share it. But was I truly prepared for those 49 days when they come again? And what about you? I've laid this book before the world, shown you the light, the illusions, the mirror. But when you face death, what will you choose? The answer isn't mine to give. It's yours.